Hello and welcome. My name is Alan Williams and I'm speaking to you from Forsam British School, which is in Alexandria in Egypt. I'll be making a presentation now on a topic that has become important to me over the years. And I first started being aware that I was using this technique for teaching really within the first 2 years of my teaching beginning as an art teacher. So how it began was that in my first school, the headmaster came in to visit my classroom, which was an art studio, and he looked at all the work that was on the wall by all the different students. And he said, how is it that you gave the students all the same starting point? And now I look at the finished pieces of work and they're all so completely different. And I said, this is just something that I do in the way that we do go through the stages. It is a process. And because I concentrate more on the process than the product, we end up with all these very different results. And to put it together, to try and explain it to you today, I've given it this title, which doesn't exist, called Transability, which really we'll look at my sort of definition for it. So it's transability, spelled like this on the slide. As I say, it's a completely made up word, a new way of sharing. And so the definition really is to create a new way of learning. And I based it on what I found out about how a flock of geese migrates. As you know, they tend to fly in a sort of sideways V shape. And I always believed that the lead bird, the one that's in the center of the V at the sort of front, was the leader all the way through their journey, their migratory journey. But it turns out this isn't true, that the lead bird, after a while, falls back and another bird takes the place. And this happens, this swapping over happens throughout the migratory journey. And it's a bit like how I imagine a good teacher is. They begin at the front, they lead the class until the class get the hang of it, until everybody's in the same flow, the same rhythm. And then a student who feels confident enough can take over into the lead, and the teacher can fall back all the way back until they are probably the last person in that V shape, that all the students are now in front of the teacher, heading in the right direction, heading in the path. And this is a sort of aim of creating high flyers, like the birds, so that the teacher is simply there in the background and the students are leading the path of learning. So that's the great hope of this process. So let's just go back and define it once again. Transability is the transfer of all your knowledge and experience along with your passion for the learning, and it gets passed on to them so that they're not only as good as you, but they want to build and become better than you, and every opportunity they become even more successful than you would. So it's a big aim. I'm really believing that students, once they are passionate, once they know everything you know, they can go beyond even what you could do. And the way we're going to structure this slideshow is I'm going to show you the framework. We're then going to show you how we have the springs on which they leap forward and the safety nets to support them. And we will look at how it works in terms of emanating out from the center like a cobweb. And finally, the tools and the roadmap that you need in order to succeed. Okay? Now, we're going to use just a dummy project. Just doesn't have to be anything. And it doesn't have to be art. It can be any subject that is on the school timetable. And it could be done over any period of time. But the longer it is done, the more those students will develop their own individual work. They've been allowed to go deeper, investigate it more, make more sort of connections, if you like. And so the work goes in really different directions from the center. That's the point. Think of it like that. It's not linear, it expands out from the middle. So here we are. Imagine I'm talking to a group of, I don't know, 14-year-olds, and I'm saying, we're going to look over this term, which is 8 weeks. We're going to look at the concept. What is art? What is it all about? And hopefully I'm going to stimulate you so that you develop your own particular journey, your own investigation into this topic. What is art? And all of you, each and every one of you, will come up with a different conclusion. But you might like to talk to each other along the way and find out what each and every one of you are doing, because that makes it all the more fun to see. So let's begin with the title. What is art? Well, key word here, of course, is art. So we have to break art down into its component parts. Now, there are many more than I'm using here. I've only used 4. But if we look at them, we can say art, for instance, there's a history of art. Art has gone through the different ages, the time periods, by having movements. The very earliest movements like Renaissance back in the sort of 14th century to the more modern ones in the 20th century like pop art. So there is a history of art. That's one aspect of this subject. Another one, of course, is the market, selling of art. Back in the sort of time of the 19th century in Paris, there were salons, and the rich people would go along and see the latest artists and their artwork and buy them from the salons. Today we have galleries in which anybody can go along, and as long as they can afford it, can buy the artwork from that artist. And whether they just love that art or whether they're investing it in the hope that that artist becomes more famous, artwork becomes more expensive to buy, and so it's like anything else, you can make a profit by investing in the right person. Another aspect of art is the different types of art. We know that there is sculpture, printmaking, photography, painting. All of these are different types of art that we can see. And finally, we know that art is broken down into many, many skills. So the one that I've got on this slide shows you the skill of putting little dabs of paint onto a whiteboard and then using a normal toothbrush, and from the center outwards, we brush out simply like that, and we create the sort of hairs of the feather. It comes out and it looks like a feather, and by using those different blocks of paint, we make it a multicolored. So those are 4 different breakdowns of that one word in the center, art. And the way in which each student decides which one of the component parts of the main topic area will decide the journey that they're going to take and how it's going to end up looking. So now we look at something I've become interested in over the many years ago. I discovered it was a book called Mind Maps by the creator of it, Tony Bazan. And it's very easy to find these. And once you've done one, you can do them over and over again. You don't need to buy the book. And what a mind map is, as you see, everything emanates from center. So if the topic is what is art, and we put it where the yellow bit says how to mind map, and then just the pink one that goes off there could be the pink one that's all about skills. The blue one that goes off to the right could be about the markets, the selling of art. The blue one over there could be about the history of art, and so forth. And by doing that and having the little branches go off and all of this comes through from your research, you will find a fantastic main map on which you can work and really as make it as diverse as you like. It can be really great fun doing these mind maps. So here we go. This is the process. Now we're looking at the stages in the process. And as you can see at the top of the slide, it's about research, review what you've collected, what you've discovered, and then by creating blending of ideas, we can come up with something that looks new. It's probably renew because nothing is totally original, because we're simply combining ideas together. So as we look down on the actual cycle, you start by the topic is art, research everything you can find out about art, from the artist, their artwork, the skills that they use, the techniques, and combine things that you like. And through that, when you come to review all the different artists and their artwork, etc., we then make some selections. We choose our favorites. What areas do we want to go even deeper into discovering and finding out more information? And again, the next sort of station, if you like, next stop that we come to is when we blend. So if we take the butterfly life cycle, which is there as an inset, we look at the adult butterfly and we look at the caterpillar. We can say, what if I took the wings off the butterfly and put them onto the caterpillar? And I create something new by simply blending two ideas into one. What about the leaf that the eggs appear on? They look like wings. What if I use that idea? The pupa looks like the body of the butterfly, probably is most of it. Could I use that idea? So it's about blending. It's about putting things together which do create something new. And we need to do this over and over again. We can keep recycling as long as we do that process. It's open to a lot of changes. And here we see another view of that. On the left, you see the written thing. Search, identify opportunities, generate new ideas. Then you evaluate your creative ideas, and then you make selections of those. And then you start thinking about how you're going to put those ideas that you've blended, what ways is it going to work? And you look at that sort of through different activities. And on the right-hand side, we see something, an object, which has gone through that process in a fantastic way. When you think that the original phone created by Sir Alexander Graham Bell was simply about talking to somebody, what seemed on a wire, and communicating with someone, you know, next door or 100 miles away, depending on the telegraph poles. And then, of course, this developed and developed until we get to computers, to the digital age. And sort of in the last, 20 years, maybe even 10, we've had different aspects. When we think about, for instance, you know, the iPhone, we start having, you know, digitalization, and we can look at the weather, we can use the internet, we can use all sorts of different applications on the phone. So we see its very first incarnation as a very simple phone, right through to the modern phone that you can buy today. And we see that incredible journey. And this is all done by that thing that we see on the left. Now, there are many ways to record. Firsthand is like if you were in the office with me now and standing next to where I'm talking, that's firsthand experience. You're actually there to see it firsthand as an audience watching a show. But if you see a recording of that show on the television, that is secondhand. So this is what I'm saying. If you can get your students to try to make sure that all their research is firsthand, then they use a camera to record something visually. They make a print that could be made from making someone put their hand into a plaster. That is a print. A sound recording is using a tape recorder. An artifact is the sort of thing we bring back from holiday, something we buy that reminds us of the place itself. A cast, again, is simply making a mold. A video is what's happening now with the camera above the monitor, is videoing me as I'm talking. The sketch is when you do a drawing of me. That is another recording. And an interview is when someone is in the room and the camera is showing us two talking to each other. Now, in the next column is secondhand. Now, whether you put this in a scrapbook, when we cut something out of a magazine, we put it into a scrapbook, that would be something we all understand. It could also be done electronically. It can be done through a computer. So we can make cuttings, we can do videos, you can find reports that are produced, we can find them online, we can find them inside booklets, reports. Articles, again, in a newspaper, you cut out that article. It's written by somebody else reporting about that initial thing happening. A graph and a visual are used often, aren't they, to show us the results of something, and we can see whether it rises or it falls. Recording, again, we can listen to that, but it's made from something else that was done before. And downloads we do when we look at something on YouTube. So these are ways in which we can keep track of what we are recording and researching. And here we see different sort of main forms of doing this in. Now, students, of course, in my subject, use sketchbooks, and these were designed for drawing and writing in. But journals can be very similar. You can write into a journal like a diary, but you can use visual symbols and things that you can recognize, and they save time, bullet points, etc. A portfolio is what my students used to keep their sketchbook and their drawings and paintings in. It's a large container. But a portfolio could be done on a computer. It could have lots of visuals with a backing, a bit like a slide on a PowerPoint presentation. We can have wall displays. Somebody can put up their display on the wall and open it up, and we can see all the work that they've done. This can be also done onto a screen. And this is similar to a PowerPoint presentation. This is what you're looking at now, is a PowerPoint presentation. And these are fantastic ways because you can, again, use animations and all sorts of things, and they're very flexible things indeed. And one of my favorites, and I know you use them in Kazakhstan, is the TED Talk. So the actual author stands in front of their own PowerPoint presentation, and they can bring attention to things that are on the screen behind, and they can interact with the audience. And you know, the great thing with some of these, like the presentations, the PowerPoints, the TED Talks, they can be done by individuals, pairs, or even groups of people. And I love doing all of those things. And I used to with the art students that I used to teach in various schools before. Now, what sort of things can you use as springs that help the kids, you know, raise their game, that leap them forwards? It reminds me, I don't know if you know the game Snakes and Ladders. The snakes always raise you up quickly. They're a fast track way to get somewhere. So we'll talk about those. But the nets are also there to support you, to make sure that you don't come unstuck. You give up. You find that you don't know what you're going to do next. So number one thing that I did when I gave students long periods of time to do a project like the What is Art project, we would every week ask one of the students, or maybe two students, just get some differences, to open their sketchbook or however they're working and talk about where they are in stage one or stage two, wherever they're going, so that everybody else can see how someone is negotiating each stage of the way. And that goes back to this idea of the geese flying. You now have stepped out of it. Someone else now is showing their sketchbook or their first slides on a PowerPoint, and they are now taking the lead. They are showing the others where they are. They're moving on quite quickly. And hopefully people will volunteer to do this. They're very excited where they are in their journey, and they open up their books or their show, or even on a monitor of the screen, and say, this is where I am, and this is what I've found so far. Tutorials are ones where it's just you as you walk around the classroom and you stop by somebody's desk or wherever they're working and say, what are you doing right now? Yeah, that's good. Where will that go next? And, I'm very interested in this part of it. And that can be a one-to-one. And as students see you do that, other students will go and talk to the person next to them, or someone across the way who's doing something interesting. So this is all expanding their concepts. They might change their mind because of something they saw somebody else doing. And then, of course, you move on to the big presentations. And these might happen midway. You can ask some of the students to show their work who have got there already, and then different students at the very end when you come to the conclusion. But again, they can be for feedback. They can see what other people think of their work so far. And, it helps them break that innerness. We want them to expand outwards. And the only way they can do that is through communicating and showing their work. And at some point, it might be interesting because you're using technical language, whatever subject you're dealing with, geography, science, whatever it might be, or language. They are also perhaps developing a criteria. And you can say to them, how do you decide whether you're doing well? What makes you know? The fact you're further along in your work than other people, is that a good thing? Is it the quality of the work, the originality of the work, how well your project is answering the original question? So these are all ways that help develop their assessment criteria, so they can know how well they are doing without you. Now, of course, now we're in a technological age. There are many ways that you can look at your development. A classroom, you can set up a corner in which you put things on the wall. You can make a corner into a stage. You can make a corner a place where you can make models. All of these things are very important to realize. We might go somewhere else. If the school, what about going to the library? Can we go to the theater and do things on the stage itself? Can we go to the ICT labs and use their equipment for that? Can we go outside? Is there an opportunity to do that? There's a whole load of things we can do then. Can we go out in the street and ask people questions or ask their reaction to something you've done? Or put a piece of work up on and people come up to it and ask you questions? Can you, if you are doing something about the environment, go out and do some work in the environment, like cleaning up a riverbank and seeing what people think of before and after? Also external sources. And if I may, I'll go back to my own being an art teacher with my older students, but visiting an art college where people are doing advanced courses. The students love this. They were talking to older students who had the same love of art that they did, but were at a different level. They talked to the lecturers. They saw the sort of projects that they work on. What materials, what equipment did they use? This really opens up whole new avenues for them. Their brains burst with the excitement of what's before them. Of course, you can go to professional places, visit museums, go to the places of work where they are doing this. For instance, if I'm doing geography, go to the weather station and find out how that works. Go to an archaeological dig and help, if I'm interested in theater and drama, go to a theater, go behind the scenes, see them doing rehearsals, watch the people who are painting the scenery, the wonderful, guys who record sound and visuals. You can do a heck of a lot. Inviting ex-students, I used to do that. I was 6 years at one school. So as students left me, they came back from where they were studying at college and set a project for the students in some of the year groups. They sat down and gave them feedback on my own kids' work from a student, an older perspective. Even ones who got jobs came back and showed work they'd done from school to university to now that they're professionals. And internships are exactly another way. So if kids are interested in what work is like, for instance, why don't they go and work in a shop for a day to find out what it's like? What's it like to work in a factory, a hospital? These are internships and can be fascinating. So there's a whole lot. Please do not be limited to the classroom. Work cross-curricular, work with older groups, work with teachers, bring people in, I brought artists into residence, and we could pay them so much and they worked for a while. Bringing tutors from colleges and bringing professional photographers, all of these helped with the students and to make them more excited to what's going on. Now, if you go to the Facebook of my school, For Sandbridge School, you will see my students presenting to anybody looking at any of those subjects. You will see that. You'll get the hang of it. Go to the Facebook, see our students, and you'll see that they believe in hands-on learning. They become the teachers. They are the ones who will explain what they do in the classroom. Very important. We also encourage students to buy their own equipment. My students bought their own sketchbooks, their own pencils, their own paints. They bought the portfolios. That way they loved and cherished everything that they owned and how they used it. They did lend it to people, but they were passionate, and that was an extension of their interest. Of course, as a teacher, you should be doing less and less. The more passionate the kids become about your subject, they run to your lessons, they keep you afterwards, showing you what they did at home. They tell you everything. Their parents ring you up, telling you their kids are working on this and, they've done this and that and what they have to spend on their kids and that sort of thing. And of course, you become a sounding board. You come to their level. They talk to you on a more equal basis. And this makes them more individual as you encourage them to be so. And they have more open-ended goals. They realize the process is more important than the product at the end. It's what they're learning along the way that's of real value, that changes them as people. And that's how you keep expectations high. I'd like to give you another example, and I want to come right down. In year 3, which is kids of 8, 9 years old, I was teaching geography to them. And so we started off, I put all the countries of Africa into a hat. We went around the room. The kids just picked blindly each country. They opened it up. And once they knew which country, he said, what should be in the presentation? What do you think are the key things? And they said, the temperature in the country, how big the country is, what the people look like, what do they do, all of these things, what's their food, things like that. So we made a sort of what things should be, definitely in every presentation. We then gave how long for the research, the preparation of the presentation, and maybe we gave between 4 and 7 weeks or something like that, so that when someone's finished, they can do it, but they have to have done at least 4 weeks of research. And then those who are slower, they must get it finished within the 7th week and present it. How long is the presentation? Well, how long do you want it? You can make it 3 minutes. It can be as long as 8 minutes. It just depends. Okay, and we would fit in so many in every lesson or a double lesson depending. And finally, as kids get involved in it, They want to know how well they've done. They don't want to leave it to you. They put everything into it. And so they want to have a say in how they're assessed as well. And that is a very, very good sign once you get to that level. And so what did I find? Well, it was fascinating. The kids who were the best students, of course, finished within 4 weeks. They put their presentation up. They were very clever and they gave their talk, but they thought that was it. And what I was saying each time a class did, some of the students did, I would add something. I would say, oh, I was interested. You didn't ask anybody questions in the group. Oh, I didn't know. So the next ones, of course, made sure they asked questions. And then I said, oh, something I do with you guys, I give you handouts so that you got extra information. Can we do that? So the next group are probably the middle range group, and they're giving handouts. They're thinking, this is great, Ms. Springs gave us this idea. And then, of course, we get to the kids who actually believe they're low ability. They've taken long. But I say to them, hey, now you've done this, why don't you bring in some artifacts and let people to have a look at them? Why don't you say, how much did you learn? I'm going to ask a few of you questions. They go, this is brilliant, Mr. Williams, thank you. And of course, what happens is when you get to the 7th week, the kids who are the first ones say, hey, I didn't know that. Can I have another go? And you've stimulated the whole group. And all they want to do is improve, improve, improve. And that was the fantastic outcome of doing that. And creativity is, if I can say it, is at the heart of this. Ken Robinson, whose quote is at the bottom of that picture there, says it all when he says it's important in education is literacy, and we should give it that credibility. Kids can express themselves, and they can do it in lots of different ways, and that's what I want them to do. I want them to become the teachers, and they must use every way to demonstrate that they've learned the topic superbly well. And that's why I'm so passionate about creativity. And let's be honest, it's a #1 skill when they leave school. People want people who are creative, who can add new ideas, think of new ways to do things. So it's a very important skill. So it's a way of thinking, really. And what I would say to you as I finish, before I lose my voice, focus less on reproduction of information. That's called rote learning. It's very old-fashioned. We need to get the kids to develop their critical thinking and their problem solving. Thinking without limits. I'm a great believer in that. The one truth that's true now as it was 40 years ago is we underestimate the kids. They are capable of so much more. And this blending I told you about, if you're doing history, why not get them to do a play on stage, dress up in the costumes, use the language of the time, get them involved, take over the parts, be an Egyptian, be an ancient Roman. And of course, if they're doing the cosmos, they're doing astrology, why not use writing poems? They write a thing about the poems. It becomes like rap. They learn information by coming up with a good little poem about where is Neptune, where is Mars, how do you know the different planets? These are ways of learning. And finally, keep them stimulated. Pose questions at the start of the lesson. Give them challenges. They love it. And also, don't push time in a bad way. If you ask a question, give them 5 minutes to answer it. If it's a good question, they need 5 minutes. Give them reflection time to look back at what they've done or said, and give them time to rethink it or to improve it. Why is time such a rush? We give them time to prepare and to be happy with their performance. And this will also provide them the space to create new creations. Well, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it, and it gets you thinking. And whatever you do with it, it's bound to be good. And I'll finish with a thank you and a nice little quote there from somebody who at the end says, it's not, making them sort of just do what's comfortable. We want to, excite them, to teach them how to soar on their own. and we see a boy, and I always think of Kazakhstan playing chess. So, you know, every moment you spend with one kid or a class, that word of encouragement, it goes a long, long way. Good luck in the future. It was nice talking to you all, and goodbye. Bye-bye.